A broken heart, tell me if I deserve this feeling.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I have three very different but absolutely busted HYDROID builds to show you. If you didn't know, with the Abyss of Dagath update, HYDROID was completely reworked. This led to brand new abilities, tweaking old ones, augment changes, and adding new gimmicks. I'm gonna show you two run and gun builds that destroy in completely different ways, and a third camp setup that is sure to reap you all the rewards you need from your next farm. Even a little bit of companion action in the showcase as well, but first, we need to look at what has changed in case not everybody is caught up on the rework. Remember Corroding Barrage from Status 2.0? Back when corrosive procs could fully strip armor, and how Status 3.0 got rid of that, capping it to 80%? Well yeah, that's back, but only for HYDROID. You see, HYDROID's new passive sets the armor strip of the first corrosive proc inflicted by any of his abilities or weapons to 50% instead of 26%. This lets him reach 100% armor strip with 10 stacks. And because it's from any source by HYDROID, then now your entire arsenal can full strip. For anything that applies corrosive stacks quickly, such as beams, you might as well be a walking armor strip aura. How about his abilities? Well, hold first tap is gone for his first and fourth. Now they always cast at max spawn radius. Personally, I would have preferred hold first tap staying, just without the charge mechanic, but it also no longer ragdolls and instead staggers on hit. For his 1, it now has its augment built in and does corrosive damage and procs by default. Because corrosive can full strip from HYDROID, his 1's augment has been changed to grant viral procs to his 1, hence Viral Tempest. His 2 is almost the exact same, except it is slightly more controllable mid-Tidal surge. It also holds enemies, it grabs now and applies corrosive procs instead of violently shoving them forwards upon collision. The status cleanse from his abilities augment has also been made innate, and there is no cap to how many Tempest barrage zones can exist at once. Undertow has been completely removed and replaced with Plunder. This ability is actually very simple. It removes any active corrosive procs from enemies and makes their missing armor permanent. It has a hard line of sight check and has a perfect spherical hitbox. For every enemy hit and or corrosive proc removed by this ability, up to 20, you gain 10% corrosive damage buffs as a mod effect on your weapons, scaling with strength. It also grants armor per enemy hit, up to 750 total, scaling with strength. Since Undertow no longer exists, a new augment called Rousing Plunder was created, and it basically works like plus 50% strength for only Plunder's armor and corrosive scaling and not the other abilities. But it also lets you heal 50 HP per enemy hit, scaling with strength to you and all allies within affinity radius. The main benefit of Plunder is getting corrosive damage for DPS and procs for its passive without having to mod it on your weapons. And the main benefit of Plunder's augment is literally just the heal. Tentacle Swarm has changed quite a bit on the back end, even if it doesn't visually. It no longer swings enemies around all over the place anymore, making them easier to hit. Do remember, you can't aim it anymore, which can be a bit annoying. More importantly, my old HYDROID meme builds where I killed with Tentacle Swarm DPS no longer works because they removed the collision hitbox damage of the tentacles when they erupt from the floor. Now the tentacles always only deal damage once on initial cast and then a subsequent ticking damage instance. This means you cannot root enemies to the floor anymore with Condemn or Petrify to do obscene damage by spawning a ton of tentacles on top of a group of enemies, which would force them to get stuck on the collision hitbox of erupting from the floor. This ability has become 100% utility only now for the purposes of Pilfering Swarm to grant you extra loot. If you aren't using Pilfering Swarm, there is literally zero reason to cast this ability. And yes, enemies only need to touch the tentacles for extra loot, not be killed by them. Alright, now that we know how HYDROID works post-rework, let's get into those broken builds, shall we? First one up is a run and gun build using Plunder to health tank and grant yourself corrosive damage so you can rip enemies apart with armor strip passively as your DPS. Now any weapon works with this, however I've chosen the Ocucor for our first build showcase because beams apply corrosive stacks very quickly, letting you strip all armor off near instantly. The only counter to Ocucor has always been armor, And since Hydroid turns you into a walking armor strip, it's a perfect match. If Ocucor gets patched out from this interaction with Hydroid somehow, I would recommend trying out the Gaze Kit Gun, Tenet Cycron, or Kuva Nucor. These are chain beams that require a little bit more aim than Ocucor, but still have good KPM potential and can be sprayed around easily with fast reloads. The Ocucor build for reference I'm using today looks like this. Ocucor has a busted augment from the last Nightwave called Sentient Surge. It's only 50 plat at the moment on Warframe.market, so I'd recommend picking it up, as Ocucor doesn't need to reload so long as it keeps killing and has ammo available. Plunder solves the armor problem so it can keep killing, and Ammo Mutation Exilus solves the ammo problem so it can keep auto-reloading from reserves. I would recommend bringing a second weapon to kill Acolytes though, since you cannot full strip them with Plunder since they're capped to 4 corrosive procs, and beam weapons just sucking against them. But for a full breakdown on why Ocucor is so strong and all the things it can do, check out my video at the top right. Let's look at our first Hydroid build. This one requires exactly 0 Archon Shards whatsoever. The aura slot here is also free. I didn't know what to put, so I picked Growing Power. Also, Archon Intensify, while it works, is not always the best option for rousing Plunder. You will not get the buff until you actually heal, but Plunder's Augment is our only ability that heals. Because Plunder resets to the most recent stacks on each cast instead of the highest buff, but it also removes all corrosive procs on enemies each cast, you have to cast it twice for Hydroid to benefit from Archon Intensify's bonus strength. This means in between casts and within 10 seconds, you have to apply new corrosive procs. Honestly, I found this kind of annoying, even if your 1 can do this for you since it's just an extra 16% strength compared to Umbral Intensify. And there are no strength breakpoints on this Hydroid in particular, I just didn't care. Use it if you want. Rousing Plunder is also optional and dependent on if you actually expect to tank a lot of damage, since we already have Equilibrium. I modded some duration since Plunder actively resets to most recent cast, therefore, higher duration grants you more time to find a new group of enemies as needed for recasting instead of racing against the clock. We also build some duration since we're slotting Tidal Impunity. This grants us complete status immunity, which lasts 20 seconds, meaning we don't need Prime Sure-Footed and can slot preparation for a bigger energy tank at spawn. This build reliably reaches 1500 to 2000 armor from Plunder, as well as 290 armor innate and Arcane Guardian. It's not hard to effectively have about 2700 armor overall, which would be equivalent to 90% damage reduction, and combined with adaptation brings us up to an average 97% damage reduction. Arcane Blessing will also let us cap out to 1570 health. To use this build, you just go find some enemies, cast 1 on them 2 or 3 times, then cast Plunder. Now, you just spam your Ocucor forever. Enjoy! When Plunder timer runs low, just find a new group of enemies and spam your 1 a few times, then cast Plunder. The reason why we use our 1 to set up Plunder is Ocucor becomes way too strong with the corrosive procs added, fully stripping armor off enemies, and it instantly kills them with viral DPS. We don't have a safe way to keep enemies alive but tag them with corrosive on Ocucor. Therefore, the easiest way to rebuff is casting your 1 and 3. Also, caster 3 is needed to heal. Your 2 will cleanse and grant 20-second status immunity, so do remember to use that as needed, and your 4 is useless on this build, so you can subsume it off for whatever you want. The second build is what I'd like to call the Lemming XP build. This is all his work from what we saw on stream yesterday. That's Liam XP, and I'm basically showcasing you what he came up with. Please do go check him out on Twitch. He's part of our stream team stuff, and he's finally back to streaming Warframe almost every day. Now, instead of using Plunder to DPS buff, which heavily favors beams, Liam wanted to use AoE spam weapons. Kuva Tonkor works because it has amazing ammo economy for how fast we spam it, and it gets 3 ammo back per pickup, with as much reload speed as possible while not gimping damage. This doesn't work as well normally. since AoE spam is meant to kill in 1 to 2 shots, which does not allow enough time for corrosive stacks to full strip. So in exchange, Tempest Barrage can do this for us by spreading an absolutely absurd amount of carpet bombs all over the place. Forever. Also, please turn off your effects intensity for this build if you want to save your eyes. Let me be clear. If you want to try this build, you will most likely want to set a more comfortable way to cast your first ability, because A, B, C is the mantra of this setup. Always be casting. This build churns through 4,000 to 5,000 energy a minute. Leading with this might explain to you on why the build will look the way it does, as well as why energy economy sources are the way they are. Do keep this in mind. The most expensive build I've ever shown to date only used about 1,600 energy a minute, and that already required higher strength, energize, and equilibrium. Okay, let's look at that Kuva Tonkor build. It's a standard crit viral. Because we assume enemies are full stripped, we don't need any other elements. Also, do keep in mind this setup is a bit pointless against Corpus, since we could just use anything toxin related and an armor strip wouldn't even be an issue. But for armored enemies, this HYDROID build can be a bit of fun. Primed Firestorm bumps AoE to 10 meters. Prime Fast Hands and Fractalized Reset are what we use to cut our reload down as low as possible. Since we're spamming Tempest Barrage, it should be active always, and this brings us to plus 295% reload speed, or cutting it just down to 0.38 seconds. If you want to skip Prime Fast Hands for a different mod, that's okay. Reload speed will still be cut down to 0.44 seconds instead. I would recommend bringing a second weapon to kill Acolytes though, since you cannot full strip them with Plunder as they're capped to 4 corrosive procs, and our Plunder corrosive buff sucks on this build. HYDROID build next. This build opens up with strict Archon shard requirements if you don't want this build to feel like crap. We spam our 1 forever, so we need casting speed. I opted for 2 casting speed shards, Tau Forged, even better, and 3 duration shards to make your Tempest Barrage full strip zones last longer. The build looks like this. At 100 efficiency, if we cast Tempest Barrage twice per second, which is the bare minimum expected frequency, that's 50 energy per second or 3,000 energy burned per minute. Now it's usually actually higher than this. To offset this ridiculous cost, we have Nourish with Malt Augmented. This brings us to 155 strength, so that all energy sources are 2.55 times as effective. We also have Energize, which is worth about 600 energy a minute by itself, and we also get slightly more health orbs from Synth Deconstruct for equilibrium, because we're nuking too fast. This build is also a shield gating build instead of a heal tanking build like previous, using catalyzing shields for a 1.33 seconds shield gate, but only 130 shields needed to refill. Now, because we're spamming our 1 always, we're also always regenerating shield. Brief Respite with 3 Augur mods is 270 energy to shield conversion, or 67 shields regenerated per cast of your 1. Remember to have 2 Augur mods on your pistol. Prime Flow grants us big enough reserves for energy drop drops due to burning 50 energy per second. We ignore our 3 and 4 in this build, and thus you can subsume either of them off. Now, the last build is the ultimate solo farm HYDROID build. Honestly, not much has changed on this setup post-rework, except corrosive being able to full strip on HYDROID. The main shtick is actually a synergy with the Companion rework. You can now sit in one spot, force enemies to be dragged to you for kills, have the loot drop right nearby, all while holding down mouse 1 and not having to move outside of grabbing loot. It does have a decent amount of setup per rotation, but we also run obscenely high duration to offset this, and it's still quite simple. We're using the Ocucor build from earlier because it just works so well, but do note that any kind of chain beam weapon also works here, such as Kuva Nukor, Tenet Cycron, or Gaze Kit Guns. In fact, alternative options to Ocucor are even better suited backups on this build compared to build 1, because Nukor, Cycron, and Gaze require you to actually aim around at enemies, unlike Ocucor, while you're running around. On the other hand, when you're camping like this, enemies always come from the same direction, meaning you only have to aim in 1 or 2 specific spots while staying in place. Let's look at that final HYDROID. I would recommend 2 casting speed charts since I chose not to equip natural talent on the build. As you can see, we have sky high duration. This minimizes how often we need to reset our camping. Enemy radar was chosen to best see AI pathing, so you can select good camping corners or dead end rooms better. Prime sure-footed because self-explanatory. Pilfering because, that's the whole point of the build. Viral Tempest allows your one's armor strip zones to apply both viral and corrosive, which is important for a companion discussion later. Primed Flow so you have massive energy bank whenever needed, and overextended. Range is actually pretty specific. Too much range breaks the setup by spawning tentacle swarms all over the place at bad spawns. Too little range makes your Tempest Barrage unable to apply big enough armor stripping hitboxes consistently to hit enemies. I found going slightly above positive was best. Blind Rage is used to maintain 100 strength so that Viral Tempest still has 100% status chance on inflicting viral procs. Energize is self-explanatory, though unnecessary. Multi-efficiency bumps our duration all the way up to 325, which means our shortest duration ability, Tempest Barrage, will now last 32.5 seconds per cast. You can spam this as much as you want to make procs apply faster. Usually I cast it 3 to 5 times on a choke point. Shoot the ground under you once you found a camp spot with Quiver to stay invisible and keep you and your companion alive. Now, the synergy counterpart to this farm, Hydroid, is our companion. I brought the Nautilus for a very specific reason. This companion can be farmed from Railjack Neptune Proxima. On the other hand, I just went and bought it because originally the farm was a pain in the ass. But see, as a unique grouping precept called Cordon. This is basically Ensnare but cast on top of your Sentinel, and because we're camping, it pulls enemies directly to us through our Tentacle Swarm to make them eligible for double loots, and then we kill them. But more importantly, Manifold Bond, a new companion mod. This mod reduces companion ability cooldowns by 3 seconds whenever we kill enemies with 3 or more status effects. Now remember Viral Tempest's augments. That's why we used it, so that Hydroid armor strips everything passing through the tentacles, but already applies 2 out of the 3 status effects we need to activate this mod. Viral to buff our damage and corrosive to strip. Your weapon will be bringing the third element of whatever you want. My Ocucor has radiation, viral, heat, and puncture. The main thing is that any kills from you or your companion qualify towards activating Manifold Bond to reduce your Nautilus's Cordon a cooldown by 3 seconds. Since the majority of the enemies you kill will have 3 status effects or more, you can spam reset Cordon almost constantly for easy loot. That's it. The rest of my Nautilus build looks like this. Prime Regen cuts base revive timer from 60 seconds to just 25, and remember that companion precepts and abilities always activate in priority from left to right, top row before bottom row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the top, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on the bottom. Do not use Duplex Bond, as we're only using your companion to spam Cordon. Duplex clones wander by themselves and will screw with AI pathing due to aggro. Use any kind of bond mod that allows you to revive your companion sooner. The one that cuts 3 seconds off for aerial kills works easily, or this headshot one. The last slot should be calculated redirection, but I just don't have enough polarity slots. Why? Because the new shield gate also applies to your companions now, and 875 shields grants much higher shield gate to your Sentinel than 250. Now, this isn't mandatory to equip though, and Assault Mode is also optional since we are the DPS on the setup, not your companion. Where you choose to camp will matter a lot. You don't want your Cordon to get enemies stuck on walls. Also, do keep in mind that if you do run Assault Mode, any enemies tagged by your Verglass, which is what I'm using on this build with this kind of setup, will count as pet assists for Synth Deconstruct health orbs. Pick the right tile with pathing that lines up with Cordon's pull direction, and that's it. Don't get them stuck on walls. 3 broken, busted HYDROID builds that you can use post-rework. Yours too is glow up in the current meta. Cheers. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always, as soon as possible. Like I've done with HYDROID's rework and the Dagath update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching and see you all next time.